When you picture the 1950s in America, what comes to mind? Maybe it's happy suburban families, shiny new cars, or black and white TV shows where life seemed simpler. But what was daily life really like for the average American family in this prosperous post-war decade? Let's step back in time and find out. At the heart of 1950s America was the family unit. The typical household consisted of a father, a mother, and several children. On average, men married young, around 23, while women often married even earlier, around age 20. Divorce was relatively uncommon compared to today, with only about 1 in 4 marriages ending that way. Stability and tradition were central to family life. The roles inside the home were clearly defined. The father was usually the breadwinner, working outside the home each day to provide for the family. The mother, on the other hand, managed the household, cooked meals, and raised the children. While this may sound traditional by today's standards, in the 1950s it was the widely accepted norm. Families placed a strong emphasis on togetherness. Dinner wasn't just about eating. It was about gathering around the table, sharing stories from the day, and bonding as a unit. Weekends often meant outings to the park, church on Sundays, or simply spending time together in the living room. Parents were deeply involved in their children's lives, nurturing them as they grew, but also disciplining them when needed. One of the most influential voices in parenting during this time was Dr. Benjamin Spock. His groundbreaking book, The Common Sense Book of Baby and Child Care, became one of the best-selling books in history. Unlike the strict child-rearing philosophies of earlier generations, Dr. Spock encouraged parents to trust their instincts and to treat their children as individuals with their own needs and personalities. His approach reshaped parenting in America and left a lasting cultural impact. The 1950s were also defined by economic growth. After World War II, the American economy boomed. Jobs were plentiful, wages were on the rise, and families had more disposable income than ever before. This was the era when the idea of the American dream truly came alive, owning a home, driving a new car, and raising a family in the suburbs. To put things in perspective, the average yearly salary was about $3,200 in 1950, rising to over $5,000 by 1959. A brand new home cost between $8,000 and $12,000. A shiny new car ranged from $1,500 to $2,000. A gallon of gas cost just 30 cents. Everyday goods were also affordable. A can of tomato soup was only 10 cents. A gallon of milk cost less than $1. A man could buy a quality suit for about $30, while a woman's dress averaged just over $3. Compared to today's prices, it sounds almost unbelievable. But in the 1950s, this level of affordability meant more families could enjoy a comfortable lifestyle. Consumer culture was thriving too. Shopping for appliances, clothes, and household items became part of the American way of life. People were eager to spend on the newest conveniences, washing machines, refrigerators, and, of course, televisions. Television exploded in popularity during the 1950s, becoming the centerpiece of American family entertainment. At the start of the decade, only about 9% of households had a TV, but by 1959, nearly 90% of homes owned one. Gathering around the television set in the evening quickly became a favorite family activity. Some shows became cultural landmarks. I Love Lucy, starring Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, was the most-watched show of the decade, combining humor and family life in a way that still feels timeless. Other family-focused shows like Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best reflected the ideals of suburban living. Adults tuned into programs like The Ed Sullivan Show, which introduced new music and entertainment acts to the nation, and Alfred Hitchcock Presents, which delivered suspense and thrills. And children, on the other hand, loved shows like Howdy Doody, The Mickey Mouse Club, and Captain Kangaroo. And then, of course, there were the Westerns. Shows like Gunsmoke and The Lone Ranger dominated primetime, appealing especially to men who enjoyed tales of adventure, justice, and rugged individualism. Television wasn't just entertainment, it was shaping culture, influencing fashion, music, and even family conversations around the dinner table. So when we look back at the 1950s America, we see more than just black and white nostalgia. We see a decade of strong family values, economic growth, and the rise of television as the new centerpiece of home life. It was a time of both tradition and change, a foundation for what modern America would eventually become. And this is just the beginning. In the next part of our journey through the 1950s, we'll dive into the exciting world of movies, sports, and the brand new sound that changed music forever: rock and roll. If you enjoyed this look back at daily life in 1950s America, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more history content, and ring the bell so you don't miss part 2. When people think of the 1950s, they often picture neat suburban homes and families gathered around the TV. But the story of this decade isn't complete without looking at how Americans spent their free time at the movies, cheering on their favorite sports teams, and rocking out to brand new music that changed the world. Let's explore the entertainment and culture that defined the 1950s. The silver screen played a huge role in shaping the decade's culture. In the early 1950s, Hollywood introduced something new: 3D movies. With cardboard and plastic glasses, audiences could see films jump out at them in 3 dimensions. Though it was a short-lived craze, peaking between 1952 and 1954, it reflected America's hunger for new and exciting experiences. By the mid to late 1950s, the drive-in theater became one of the most popular ways to watch a film. Imagine a giant outdoor screen, rows of parked cars filled with families, couples, and groups of teenagers, and the sound coming through small speakers hooked onto each car window. For many Americans, the drive-in wasn't just about the movie, it was a social event, a slice of mid-century culture. Some of the biggest box office hits of the decade remain classics today. The Ten Commandments, starring Charlton Heston as Moses, became the highest-grossing film of the decade. Heston later returned with another epic performance in Ben-Hur. John Wayne, America's cowboy hero, dominated with films like The Searchers and Rio Bravo. Meanwhile, directors like Alfred Hitchcock thrilled audiences with suspense-filled masterpieces such as Vertigo and Rear Window. Young stars like Marilyn Monroe and James Dean became cultural icons. Monroe captivated audiences with films like The 7-Year Itch and Some Like It Hot, while Dean's roles in Rebel Without a Cause and East of Eden cemented him as the ultimate teenage heartthrob. Tragically, his life and career were cut short, making him a legend. And we can't forget Disney's magic. Animated classics like Cinderella, Peter Pan, Sleeping Beauty, and Lady and the Tramp captured the hearts of children and families alike. Movies in the 1950s weren't just entertainment, they were dreams projected on a screen, shaping how Americans viewed love, adventure, and even themselves. Sports were just as much a part of American culture as movies. Baseball remained the nation's favorite pastime, with over 15 million tickets sold nearly every year of the decade. Fans got to watch some of the greatest players in history: Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Ted Williams, Stan Musial, and Ernie Banks. Each of them left a lasting mark on the sport. Football was also on the rise. The NFL produced stars like Jim Brown, Otto Graham, and Frank Gifford, while college football made headlines with Oklahoma's legendary 47-game winning streak under coach Bud Wilkinson. Boxing captured the nation's attention too. Rocky Marciano reigned as heavyweight champion from 1952 to 1956, retiring undefeated, a feat still unmatched. Fans also cheered for fighters like Sugar Ray Robinson and Jake LaMotta, names that remain legendary in boxing history.
Basketball was still a young sport in the 1950s, but the NBA was already showcasing talent. Players like George Mikan, Bob Pettit, and Dolph Schayes brought excitement to the court, laying the foundation for the game's future superstars. Whether it was baseball, football, boxing, or basketball, sports in the 1950s weren't just games, they were national pastimes that brought people together. If there's one area where the 1950s truly transformed America, it was music. This was the decade when rock and roll was born. Teenagers, eager for something fresh and rebellious, found their voice in stars like Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly, and Jerry Lee Lewis. Elvis, known as the king of rock and roll, shook the nation with his electrifying performances and 12 number-one hits in the decade. Chuck Berry gave rock its guitar-driven edge, while Buddy Holly brought heartfelt songwriting to the stage. Jerry Lee Lewis, with his wild piano playing, added fire to the genre. Television shows like American Bandstand helped introduce rock and roll to millions of households, bridging the gap between teenagers and mainstream culture. But not everyone was swept away by rock. Adults still adored crooners like Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Rosemary Clooney. In country music, legends like Hank Williams, Patsy Cline, and Gene Autry touched hearts with their melodies. Beyond music, fashion and fads also defined the decade. Boys wore coonskin caps inspired by Davy Crockett, a television hero. Girls twirled in poodle skirts and wore white bobby socks. And in 1958, a brand new toy, the hula hoop, became a nationwide craze. 25 million were sold in just 4 months. So what made the 1950s so memorable? It was more than just prosperity. It was a time when movies created legends, sports heroes inspired millions, and rock and roll gave teenagers their own identity. The culture of this decade shaped not only America, but also the world. Looking back, the 1950s were an era of tradition, fun, and groundbreaking change. If you enjoyed this journey into the entertainment and culture of the 1950s, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss more deep dives into history's most fascinating decades.